Thousands of years ago, one man started asking some really big questions. Questions about the gods he was told to worship, about the rituals he was meant to perform, basically about everything. And his search for answers would spark a religious revolution with ideas that feel, well, incredibly modern. So today, using the 1938 text History of Zoroastrianism, we're diving into the amazing story of Zarathustra. This line from our source really gets to the heart of the whole story. See, for Zarathustra, doubt wasn't a weakness, not at all. It was the engine that drove him to find the truth. It was the start of a huge shift in thinking, away from just blindly following tradition and towards a faith built on asking why.
All right, so to really get what he was up against, you have to picture the world he was born into. We're talking about a world with tons of different gods, where religion was all about complicated rituals and ancient traditions, practices that, for Zarathustra, were starting to feel pretty hollow. And this really shows you the clash he was feeling. On one side, you have the old religion, which our source describes as reeking with the blood of sacrificial animals and stuck in what it calls barren formalism, just going through the motions. But on the other side, that was his new vision, a faith that wasn't about big public rituals, but about what's inside, your own personal piety, living a good life, and this absolutely radical idea of just one God.
So, what do you do when the world around you just doesn't add up anymore? Well, if you're Zarathustra, you leave. He literally walked away from society and went up into the mountains. He decided that if no one could give him the answers he was looking for, he would have to become his own teacher. Out there, surrounded by nature, he started looking inward for the truth.
And it's out there, in that total solitude, that everything changes. This wasn't just him taking a break. This was the journey that led to a massive spiritual breakthrough, one that would give him a new mission in life and introduce a totally new way of thinking about God.
You can really trace his whole path here in 4 pretty clear steps. It all kicks off with doubt, questioning the world around him. That doubt drives him into seclusion. It's there, in the quiet, that he has his great revelation. And that revelation, well, that gives him his ultimate mission, to go back and tell everyone what he's discovered. So what was this big revelation? At the very heart of it was a single, supreme God he named Ahura Mazda. And the name itself is so important. It literally translates to the wise Lord. This wasn't a God who was just powerful or angry or jealous. For Zarathustra, God's most essential quality was wisdom. Now, you have to understand just how game-changing this idea was. Ahura Mazda wasn't a god of the sun or the sky, like so many others at the time. No, this god was a pure, transcendent spirit, the creator of everything, the ultimate lawgiver and judge, an abstract, ethical being, which was completely different from the flawed, very human-like gods that people were used to.
But you can probably guess what happened next. When Zarathustra came down from the mountains, all fired up with this divine message, he wasn't exactly met with a welcome party. Nope. His revolutionary ideas sparked a pretty fierce and bitter fight with the powers that be.
His biggest opponents were the priests of the old religion. He had a name for them, the Kavis and Karapans. I mean, think about it. These guys' power and their whole livelihood depended on all those complex rituals and sacrifices he was now saying were pointless. To him, they were seeingly blind and hearingly deaf, just completely unwilling to see a different, deeper truth.
And the backlash was brutal. The priests called him a blasphemer, a heretic. His community totally turned on him. His followers, his friends, even his family, they all abandoned him. He was left, as our source puts it, friendless and forlorn. It was an incredibly high price to pay for his beliefs.
And this struggle for survival didn't just last a few years. It went on for centuries. This number here, 83,000, that represents the number of words from the original Zoroastrian holy books that have survived. That's it. It's estimated that the original collection was over 4 times bigger. It's just a stark reminder of how much of this incredible history was nearly lost forever.
But he didn't give up. Despite the persecution, despite being completely alone, Zarathustra kept going. And after years of struggle, his journey finally hits this incredible climax, a breakthrough that would give his new faith the foundation it needed to survive and, eventually, to thrive.
Success didn't happen overnight, though. It was built piece by piece, convert by convert. First, his own cousin becomes his disciple. Awesome. Then he manages to win over some powerful allies, the Havogva brothers. Each win brought him one step closer to the ultimate goal, getting an audience with the king himself, Vishtaspa.
And then it happened. The conversion of King Vishtaspa and his queen Hotahosa. This was the moment that changed absolutely everything. It was the turning point. With the king on his side, the new faith finally had protection and legitimacy. It could now spread, grow, and become an established religion. It was the ultimate payoff for Zarathustra's long, lonely struggle.
Okay, so with the faith finally established, Zarathustra's ideas really started to shape a whole new moral world. So let's take a look at the core principles, the stuff that really formed the lasting legacy of his teachings.
At the very heart of his religion is this incredibly simple but really profound idea: good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. That's it. For Zarathustra, being a good person wasn't about some complicated ceremony. It was about the moral quality of your everyday actions, and it all started with the thoughts inside your own head.
So if you boil it all down, these are the massive pillars of his legacy. First, one wise God, pure monotheism. Second, the idea that righteousness, just being a good person, is the highest virtue there is. Third, this view of life as a constant struggle between the forces of good and evil. And finally, and this is a big one, the idea that every single person is accountable for their own choices.
And all of this brings us to one last, really fascinating question to leave you with. When you think about these core ideas, a single God, a heaven and a hell, a final day of judgment, this cosmic battle between good and evil, doesn't that all sound a little familiar? It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much did this ancient faith, born from one man's courage to doubt, go on to influence the great religions that came after it? Now that is something to think about.